Forml. Stjerner is the latest full-length album from Tongues. This is our, our house Denmark-based band, and one that is a little bit amorphous, very difficult to define beyond like black death metal, black doom metal, atmospheric black metal, atmospheric death metal. There's a lot to really pull from their sound, but the fact that it is amorphous is sort of the general interest here, and kind of um, the way they present their album is not the typical post metal feeling that allows things to be deemed atmospheric, and it's not necessarily the purely psychedelic experience that we were getting more in the early 2010s. But that is kind of where this starts, and I think that if you're a fan of bands like Bolzer, back in the early 2010s and around that time, you understood the appeal of Tongues because they were doing a similar black death metal thing on their early recordings, where it was obviously a different point of view infused into black death metal of the underground at the time, and there was a certain sophistication to it that still appeals today in their even more refined work. So, really, it's very essential to go back and listen to their first EP, especially if you're a fan of like Orancy Pazuzu and again Bolser and even more with Skron, because there is a floaty sort of progressive movement to a lot of their work, which was refined right from the start. Um, so what will I think the important thing to touch upon is that they had made a huge leap with Aurelia, their second album, an album that I covered very early in the life of this site, and I was really brief thoughts. A lot of those reviews back in 2017 were pulled from another site that I wrote for, so I never really got to give that album its due for how special it was. It is one of my favorite records from that year, and certainly deserves a lot more attention for what it did at the time and how it presented the band in sort of their glory as it was. The style of that record was more like a Hikiaset or Suspiral, or again, that Bolzer-esque feeling of movement and flow, which was still melodic but aggressive and breaking outside of the box a little bit in terms of black and death metal. But we'll get to what they sound like now with this clip, and we'll sort of see how they've evolved. So the biggest thing to note, I think, up front is that the production values have changed for this band. I wouldn't necessarily compare them to like the Ruins of Bevrast, but there is a sort of expanse available to this recording that is quite a bit bigger, and it really suits their sound to have more layers and more distance with the vocals and the general musicianship, because we get to hear what everyone is doing on the album, while we also get a more dynamic release in general from the band, one that has more vocal variety, has more variety of moods and shifts and pace, and generally feels a little bit more progressive and floaty in its movement overall. So we get an enhanced and very, very long time coming second album from this band, who have really reached a point of perfection, I think, with this record. I think that this is a very the way I put it here is there's a little bit of Thinking Man's sort of death metal, a little bit of doom, a little bit of more of an experiential, emotional black metal touch to it that it feels very well rounded. And for me, there are the sort of tangents of progressive metal are in there, but there's still like that orthodox black metal feeling in there too. So it's a really fine combination of sensations that are hard to, again, it's hard to nail down exactly what this band does. But I liken some of the better moments to Virus and whatnot throughout. So basically, this is one of the better records of the month. I think it's probably the best, the highest one I would rate in July. I think that it's up there among my favorites of the year, without having such a high score, because I really want to spend more time with it and see how it holds up over the rest of the year. And I think it's one of those records that really deserves a lot of depth. And you'll find that with a lot of Voidhanger Records releases is that maybe it deserves another listen. Maybe it deserves another 30 listens before it gets slotted into any space in particular. So for me, this is just a huge standout. It's one of my, again, bigger recommendations of the month. And go ahead and read a little bit more of my thoughts in the review and check the album out this Friday.